most popular advice when it comes to public speaking is contradictory. Some people say, when there's high pressure, you gotta relax in order to do your best. Other people say you have to bring that excited energy in order to sell your message. So which one is it? Am I supposed to be zen or am I supposed to be excited and pumped? Well, it turns out both are wrong. The framework for performing your best when public speaking is actually developed by neuroscientist Dr. Watkins. On the y-axis, you have two extremes. One side is excitement signaled by adrenaline, and on the other extreme, it's relaxation signaled by ACH. But this is not the whole story. You also have an x-axis where you're measuring emotional state, either negative emotional state or positive emotional state. So when we're speaking, we can be all excited, but if it's in a negative emotional state, we feel frustrated, anxious, angry even. And a lot of us are in this space when we are speaking in front of others, right? Think of that Q&A. That seems a little bit malicious, maybe not by intention, but we feel angry that they're asking us this question that we shouldn't know the answer to. But if you're excited and you're in the positive emotional state, then all of that energy becomes focused, determined, passionate, and there's so much study being done on how these elements can help you perform your best. Even Ariana Grande talks about this when she goes on stage. She feels the jitters, but she uses it to help her do better. And that's because she's in that positive emotional state. It's similar with a relaxed state. You can also be relaxed. And if you're in the positive emotional state, then that becomes curiosity, contentment, calmness, and composure. Everything we want when we're trying to communicate with others. But when we're relaxed and in a negative state, which actually a lot of us are, we feel bored, we feel indifferent, we are apathetic, we're detached. Just think of all of those meetings that you've attended where you felt all of the above. And of course, that's not the best place to then be able to communicate your ideas clearly, to even feel like you want to think about what you want to say. So when it comes to neuroscience, if we feel like we can't quite think clearly, articulate clearly, a lot of the time it has to do with our emotional state. And to be honest, especially when we're at work, we don't feel great, right? It's so easy to feel frustrated, anxious, angry, or indifferent, just feel like you don't care and it's boring. And this is really a vicious cycle because when we find ourselves in those negative states, we're unable to articulate clearly, think clearly, because it shuts down the prefrontal cortex, our executive functioning in our brain, which means we're not happy with what we're saying, what we're thinking. And that drives us further into that negative emotional state. So we have to break out of that. And the solution is surprisingly simple and within our control. Not everything is within our control when it comes to work, what we're working on, who we're working with, whether we're happy doing these things, but something we can control, and that is our breath. Dr. Watkins found that the easiest way to improve your performance, the 80-20 of it, comes down to breath, because you can regulate the signals that you send to your brain by controlling your breath. Now, how do you do it? Let me break it down for you step by step. First, pick a low stakes situation, something like a meeting where you don't even need to present, you're just there to listen and hopefully participate. Why you don't choose a high stakes situation immediately is because we have all of these automatic habits built in. When we're nervous, we shut down our prefrontal cortex and all of our executive functioning. So instead of doing that, pick a low stakes one and start to see the difference. What will happen is in those situations where you start to notice, oh, I actually don't care about what they're talking about, or this direction that they're taking this project in, it doesn't make sense, I'm getting all frustrated or anxious or angry. If you notice yourself feeling those things, bring it back to the breath. Now use your breath to move out of those negative states. And according to Dr. Watkins, there are 3 things you want to focus on for your breath. Number 1 is the rhythm. The number 1 thing is to build in something like 4 breath in, 4 breath out. For you, maybe it's 3 breath in, 6 breath out. Doesn't really matter. Find something that works for you and stick to that rhythm. And the second thing is make it smooth. It's not hyperventilating rhythmically, but you want it to be smooth in and smooth out. Then the third thing is to focus not in your brain, but in your heart. Because again, we're moving that emotional state, and most of the positive feelings we feel are actually in our heart. People say, breathe, take deep breaths, but actually that brings our focus to our stomach. And a lot of the time, nervousness, anxiousness, we actually feel that churn in our stomach. So it's better to focus in your heart. Once you move out of that negative emotional state, you'll notice the things that goes on in your head and the things that you're going to say are changing by nature. Instead of being bored and indifferent, you'll become more curious, right? This means you'll have better questions you can ask. Instead of, oh, when is this meeting going to be over? You'll be more engaged. Ask, okay, why are we focusing on this? How can I take this project and make it worth for me, worth it for my team? What can we do to make this project better? And once you have those thoughts, you're more able to communicate them with others. Of course, there's so many more techniques, frameworks we can talk about to articulate your thoughts clearly. But garbage in, garbage out. When we're in that negative state, we can't think of the right things to say. We can't think of the clear messages that we want to get across. So focus on breathing first, and when you're ready, check out this video for more frameworks on how to articulate your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!